How's it going, everyone? Patch 10.0.7 just launched today, and so I thought I'd go through the Shaman patch notes and give you an idea of what changed and how it affects Enhancement. Now, all of these changes are going to affect the Shaman class talent tree, and so we'll also go through that talent tree at the end, and I'll give you an idea of what I'll be choosing for both Mythic Plus and Raid. Starting out here with the patch notes though, the first big change you'll see is that the Astral Shift duration has been increased to 12 seconds from 8 seconds. And the reason for this is it seems like they're trying to bring Astral Bulwark more in line with the Plains Traveler talent. So the Plains Traveler talent is no longer going to increase the duration of Astral Shift. That's why the additional 4 seconds that was giving has just been baked directly into Astral Shift itself. Astral Bulwark has now had its damage reduction, or its additional damage reduction, increased to 20% from 15%. Unfortunately, I don't think that this really brings the Astral Bulwark talent more in line with the Plains Traveler talent. Yes, Astral Bulwark making Astral Shift give us 60% damage reduction is nice, but the main reason that we've been taking the Plains Traveler talent hasn't been because Plains Traveler increased the duration of Astral Shift. Yes, that is always nice to have, but the cooldown reduction that Plains Traveler gives is just so much more important most of the time in Mythic Plus and Raid scenarios. And so I really don't think they accomplished much with this change, and I kind of hope that they continue to tweak this more in the future. I think that there's definitely some changes that could be made to Enhancement survivability just in general, because we are probably one of the more squishy classes in terms of defensive abilities, but that's probably a bigger topic than this video. The next big change you'll see is the lightning bolt damage increased by 20%. This looks bigger than it actually is because in reality, the improved lightning bolt talent has actually just been removed. And so this is giving us that 20% damage while freeing up 2 talent points for us, and that is really nice to see. Earth Shield's healing has been increased by 60%. This again is a slight survivability buff. I think some people have already been running Earth Shield prior to this patch, but after this patch, I think people will be running this even a bit more. This buff to its healing is nice, but I think I saw someone say that it is about the equivalent of 2 or 3% leech. So it's definitely not the most massive thing either, but always good to have. Go with the Flow now reduces the cooldown of Spirit Walk by 10 or 20 seconds instead of 7.5 and 15 seconds. I think that this is a nice buff because it brings it a little bit more in line with how valuable Go with the Flow was for Gust of Wind, but definitely not anything too significant. Thunderous Pause can now trigger once every 20 seconds, down from 60 seconds. This is a really nice change actually. The bonus movement speed from Thunderous Pause was really helpful on some fights, and the snare removal was also very nice on some fights as well. So getting this every 20 seconds down from a minute is so nice, especially in a fight like Sinarth, where I think this might have been more noticeable than in other places. This is a really nice buff for this talent. Poison Cleansing Totem now removes all poison effects from the target instead of just one. This is a really nice buff to this talent. This is something that you're probably not using a whole lot right now. I think Algathar Academy might be the only time that this is really relevant between Mythic Plus and raiding currently, but looking ahead to 10.1 with the next season of Mythic Plus, I think that there will be some dungeons in there where we'll probably want to run Poison Cleansing Totem, but this is just a really nice buff across the board for this. Enfeeblement now applies during Hex and lasts for 6 seconds after Hex ends. This is nice, I guess, but I don't know if anyone is really using this talent too much, especially not PvP wise. And then we get into Swirling Currents, which is probably the other major change for this patch. So Swirling Currents has been entirely redesigned. Now it increases the healing done by Healing Stream and Cloudburst by 10 or 20% for Resto, and 20 or 40% for Elemental and Enhancement. This is interesting because previously Swirling Currents was increasing the damage of our next 3 healing surges after we put down a Healing Stream totem. And that was a pretty nice survivability and off healing tool that we had in the kit that a lot of people probably didn't notice too much. It probably affects people at higher end keys or maybe higher end rating that would have been using and paying attention to this a bit more than the general player base. But this is kind of taking a hit to our survivability. Healing Stream Totem doesn't have too much healing, so it is kind of nice to get a buff to it, but this does feel like a bit of a weird change to me. Again though, I would really like to see something done a bit more with our survivability in general. Then moving along, we fixed an issue with totemic projection, which was failing to move totems sometimes. This is just a nice low quality of life changes. And then you get into talents, moving positions in the class tree. Nothing too major here. Or Ancestral Wolf affinity moved to the class tree and it was removed from specialization trees. That's not something that I think we were ever really running anyways. Focus Insight has moved to the enhancement tree and is replacing where Ancestral Wolf affinity was on the tree. That's again not something that really is affecting us too much. I don't think we were ever running this outside of maybe PvP. And then of course Improved Lightning Bolt was removed like I said before, and Thunderstorm has been moved to where Improved Lightning Bolt was in the tree. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the talent trees and we can talk through what I think you're going to be choosing point wise now. Alright, so jumping into the talent trees here, you can go ahead and ignore the right side with the enhancement tree. Those builds are all still the same as they were before this patch. We're going to purely focus on the Shaman talent tree here. Now I went ahead and I filled in a lot of the points for talents that we would already be taking prior to this patch. So you have things like Lava Burst, Plains Traveler, Wind Shear, Earth Ellie, Fire and Ice, and then pathing down towards like Ancestral Guidance. You have the path down the right side down to either Spirit Walk or Gust of Wind here. And then from this point forward, we have 10 more points. So let's talk about this from the perspective of Mythic Plus. What things do we want to get here in Mythic Plus? Well, we definitely want to take Capacitor Totem, and then we definitely want to take Guardian's Cudgel on top of that. We then want to take Thunderstorm and Thunder Shock as well, and this leaves us with about 6 points remaining. Now the other things we might want in Mythic Plus are going to be Purge or Cleanse Spirit. Typically Purge is going to be the favorite option here in the current set of Mythic Plus dungeons, but if you're in like Temple of the Jade Serpent, you can definitely go ahead and run Cleanse Spirit here as well. After this, we still have quite a few options to go here. We have 5 points remaining. I think what a lot of people are going to end up doing now is actually taking a point into Chain Heal and then Earth Shield. I think Earth Shield is going to end up being a bit more valuable than putting points into Healing Stream and Swirling Currents is going to be now. So I'm going to opt to put my 2 points there. And then I usually like to run either Spirit Wolf or Thunderous Paws. Let's say Thunderous Paws here for now. Especially with it just getting buffed. The extra movement speed boost that you get every 20 seconds from that, I think is going to be pretty valuable in both Raid and Mythic Plus, but it's something I definitely need to play with a little bit more to see how I like it. And with our final 2 points here, we can take a point into Mana Spring. This is a pretty good talent. It's not an extra button anymore. It did get changed back in I think it was 10.05 if you weren't aware, so now it's restoring mana whenever we cast Storm Strike. Even though we're not Storm Striking a whole lot with the Elemental build, this can still provide some value to your healer. And then with our final point here, if you are running Wind Fury Totem, then maybe you put a point into Totemic Projection here, or maybe you go a point into Go With The Flow. You could also, if you really feel like you need Go With The Flow, you could probably opt to take the point out of Mana Spring and go 2 points into that. You could probably opt to take a point in Healing Stream if you really feel like you want it, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a whole lot of value for you now or not. Especially if you don't get the 2 points into Swirling Currents. I feel like if you do want to take Healing Stream, you definitely want those 2 extra points in Swirling Currents. Now, how would I change this if I was going into a raid scenario? Well, I wouldn't necessarily need Capacitor Totem or Thunderstorm. There's definitely some fights in the raid where those are valuable, but for the most part, let's just assume we aren't running those. From here, I definitely want to keep my points in Totemic Projection. I always like to run that in raid to keep Wind Fury Totem moving around with me. So I think that is definitely valuable to keep a point into. I think that Earth Shield is going to be something that we are running in raid as well, no matter what. So I'm going to keep my points here. And I also think that you're probably always going to be running Thunderous Paws or Spirit Wolf in Raid, so I will keep my points there as well. Purge is something you probably don't really need for most fights in the Raid. It definitely has use cases like Razageth for purging the sparks, so you will probably swap points into this sometimes, but we're really left with kind of 5 points here that are pretty flexible, and we can kind of move them around depending on the fight we're going into. If you're looking for just kind of a general use case build here, then you can definitely put a point into Healing Stream Totem and 2 points into Swirling Currents, and then after that go 2 points into Go with the Flow. And this is going to be probably a pretty solid setup that will work for most fights. And then if you do need to get like Capacitor Totem or Thunderstorm, that's when you can start taking points out of Go with the Flow and putting them into that abilities. And then if you needed to drop points from anywhere else, then I would look to drop probably points from Healing Stream and Swirling Currents, or maybe even Mana Spring if you are running the Elementalist setup, because again, this will provide some value, but not as much as the physical build because our Storm Strike casts are a bit more limited on this. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. It's a pretty quick overview of the changes for this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.